Welcome back for more inspiration using the September box of the month. This box of the month has sold out, but I'm hoping that the card that I bring you today inspires you to create, if you didn't receive the box of the month, with products from your stash. Here's a look at the two stamp sets that I am going to be using from the box of the month. The first one is called Fall Sentiments. There are 6 large sentiments in this stamp set. They are all fall related, and I like that they are going to take the center of attention on a card if you choose not to add other stamped images. There's one small sentiment that says a warm, cozy hello, and that's what I was pointing out. Otherwise, they're all large sentiments. This stamp set is called Autumn is Calling. It has fall themed images. I have colored mine up off camera. I'm going to do some ink blending on this shaker card, so this is going to be the background. I started with a piece of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch accent opaque cardstock. I'm using my blending brushes to add distress ink in Vintage Photo, Picked Raspberry, spun sugar, and ground espresso. So I'm going to have kind of a Neapolitan feel to this backdrop. I got the inspiration for the colors from one of the paper pads that was in this box of the month. But as I mentioned, the project that I'm bringing you today, you certainly could recreate this using stamps from your stash. I used that smaller brush to do my blending in the center because the larger brushes, which I absolutely love, are a little bit bigger, so I didn't want to take up too much space with the blending using the larger brushes. I thought I could get a better application and get all 4 colors on if I started in the center and I used my smaller brushes. And then these larger brushes, which are my favorite, they actually really help blend those lines. So I went back and forth over that Vintage Photo several times before I added the Picked Raspberry. I went very heavy-handed in with the Picked Raspberry, worked between those 2 colors, and then I added the ground espresso at the bottom, worked to blend that, and here I'm going to add the spun sugar. You can see how it's really helping those lines to blend a little bit more evenly. The Distress ink is a lot more vibrant than the Distress Oxide inks. If I were to use the Distress Oxide inks and I add water, I would have more of a pigmented chalky feel to it because it is a hybrid ink, but I'm going to be able to maintain that vibrancy and get the beautiful water splatters with the Distress ink. So you can see I was very heavy-handed in this. I'm going to heat emboss my sentiment, and when I heat emboss, I want to make sure that that panel is absolutely dry. So I don't want any wet ink, I don't want any wet water splatters, any moisture on that card, the embossing powder. Even when you use your embossing buddy to kind of get any of that static off of the panel, it's still going to cling because the area is not dry, it's wet. You can choose to set your ink blended panel aside for an hour and let it dry that way, or like I did, you can use your heat tool. One way to test your panel to make sure that no embossing powder is going to stick is before you do any stamping like I just did here. I used my clear embossing ink for the sentiment that has a half a pumpkin and says, "Hey there, pumpkin." Before I did that, I could have ran my embossing powder over the top of that card panel, and if there were any areas that were clinging, I could certainly clean it off quickly, dry the panel a little bit more, and then do my stamping. So I used white embossing powder, and I'm creating my edge-to-edge shaker card using a pouch that I purchased off of Amazon. So I buy these in bulk, and when I sell my cards, I put the card and an envelope in these protectors to make sure that I don't get anything on those cards and that the recipient has a nice set that has no damage to it. Now I did add some shaker bits to the inside of this plastic. So I started with some pink honeybee stamp sequins. I had some old Teresa Collins gold sequins, and then I added some glitter from Prima. I'm going to remove the release paper. This does have a sticky closure to it, so I removed the release paper. I folded it over, and you can see that I do have a nice shaker. There's nothing that is leaking from this plastic. I'm going to close the top because I don't want that 1/4 inch edge that's hanging over. I want to make sure that my shaker card is nice and clean, and I use my tape runner to do that. I'm going to fold over. I could have cut back my corners and I didn't, but so when I folded it over, I did need to add a little bit more adhesive to that one corner to make sure that it wasn't sticking out. But as you can see, I don't have anything leaking, and now I can add it to my A2 top folding card panel. So that's what I have to the right. I'm going to add some adhesive to this, and true to form, I don't get it on straight. There's going to be about a 1/16 of an inch reveal at the very top of the card panel. You'll see it in just a moment once I get this on. And when I pull the panel off to reapply it, I end up opening up my shaker. I didn't realize that the self-adhesive had kind of come up on one of the corners, and it ended up leaking some of that glitter. Now I'm not going to notice it right away, and I'm going to move on to other parts of building this card, but as I continue to work through it, I am going to have that glitter, not the sequins, just the little bits of glitter, that is going to come out. And so to remedy this off camera, I ended up adding a little bit more glue. I lifted up that bottom right hand corner where it was leaking from, and I added a little bit more glue and glued it back down, clamped it in place with a binder clip, and that alleviated the problem. These are the images from the Autumn is Calling stamp set. I did color the wood piece, the wood slice, and the scarf, mittens, the Starbucks cup. I colored it like a Starbucks cup, and the pumpkins. Of course, we did need to have the pumpkins because we used the sentiment that said, "Hey pumpkin." I kept with the same color combination as I mentioned that was in the pad of pattern paper. Once I get everything lined up where I want them, once I create my little scene, I will glue everything down using that tape runner so it adheres very nicely to the cling wrap or packaging. And you don't want to use, I wouldn't use wet glue. It's going to take a long time for any of that to set. So I would use either double-sided adhesive or, as I'm doing, a tape runner to adhere these pieces directly to the packaging. But you can see I'm going to have that nice little scene. I do have my large sentiment, and then I have that edge-to-edge top folding shaker card. Once I finish with this arrangement, my card is going to pretty much be complete. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. If you didn't get the box of the month, I do want to mention that you can apply or you can purchase the monthly auto ship, which is the subscription. You can cancel at any time, but it does assure that each month you do get the box of the month. This box sold out in just a couple of hours. It was so wildly popular. And so the only way to really assure that you're going to get the box is to make sure that you do subscribe to the box of the month, and that way it will automatically ship to you and you won't miss out on any of the boxes. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. There's going to be more inspiration throughout the month. This is a close-up look at my card, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Thanks for watching.